Developing right now on Morning News Now, a historic moment in a New York City courtroom. Deposed Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro and his wife pleading not guilty to federal drug and weapons charges just days after the two were captured in their home by U.S. forces in a surprise attack. A defiant Maduro telling a judge he is still president of Venezuela, calling himself a decent man and a prisoner of war.
He'll get his day in court with a jury of his peers in New York. This was an infrastructure and a very organized group of individuals from all over the world, different gangs and different terrorist organizations that work together to bring drugs into this country. And that's what I expect the evidence and trial will show.
Meanwhile, in Venezuela, Maduro's vice president sworn in as leader, renewing questions about who is in charge and what happens next. We'll have the latest. Also this morning, lawmakers back on the Hill after the holiday break and already facing a number of issues, including another possible government shutdown. And today, marking 5 years since the January 6th attack at the Capitol. We will take you to Washington. Plus, controversial changes, the CDC rolling back its recommendations for childhood vaccines. More on the overhaul that's set to impact millions of kids and their families. And New Year, happier you. If you're one of the many people trying to prioritize mental health this year, we have got your back. We will check in with an expert and share some tips to keep your well-being top of mind all year long. So important, and a discussion that we love having here on Morning News Now. Thank you very much for being with us today. I'm Savannah Sellers. Joe is on assignment. We are going to start once again today, of course, with the latest out of Venezuela. The Trump administration is facing mounting questions over its strategy there. This is days after the U.S. attacked the country and captured its leader, Nicolás Maduro, and his wife, Celia Flores. They made their first court appearance in New York yesterday on drug-related charges, including narco trafficking. Both pleaded not guilty, and Maduro described himself as a prisoner of war. It comes as the Trump administration faces growing criticism from some members of Congress and countries around the world over the legality of the operation and then also what comes next. President Trump said the U.S. will run Venezuela and tap its vast oil reserves. At the same time, in an exclusive interview with NBC News, the president insisted the U.S. was not at war with Venezuela. In a few moments, we will speak with NBC News legal analyst Misty Maris. Before that, we're going to bring in our chief international correspondent, Keir Simmons. We are lucky to have him here in New York and on set with us. Keir, good morning. Great to see you.
Good to see you.
Walk us through what happened in court yesterday. There were so many questions before this happened about exactly what was going to go down. There were some tense moments.
Yeah,
Tell us.
A lot of drama. The reporters in the courtroom described being able to hear the leg shackles of Nicolás Maduro before he even arrived in the court. Wow. He described himself as the president of the Republic of Venezuela, said, as you mentioned at the top there, that he is an innocent man, said that he had been kidnapped. His wife, Flores, also spoke and said that she was completely innocent. The judge stopped him at one point to say, we'll get into all this at some stage, but he repeated it again when a man shouted inside the court that he will pay. He said again, I am innocent, I am a decent man, speaking in Spanish, both of them wearing headphones in order to be able to hear the translation from the English, but from the English that was being spoken in court. But, you know, a dramatic day after a dramatic weekend.
There are so many questions now, Keir, about what does happen with the leadership of Venezuela, from people living there, from everybody who's heard the president say that we will run Venezuela. We mentioned that the president did tell NBC News that the U.S. was not at war with Venezuela, but what did he say about how this works moving forward? Is there any indication that the U.S. is supporting elections anytime soon? What does this look like?
No, he didn't dismiss elections, but he didn't say they were going to happen anytime soon, as you mentioned. Crucially, didn't say they were going to happen within 30 days. He was speaking to our own Kristen Welker. It was around about a 20-minute conversation. And I'll just read a little bit of the quote because you know, his precise words are important at this important time. We have to fix the country first. You can't have an election. There's no way people could even vote, President Trump said. It's going to take a period of time. We have to nurse the country back to health. Now, the Deputy White House Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller, speaking yesterday, took what President Trump had said much further and talked about a U.S. victory over Venezuela and talked about being able to, you know, right a wrong of Chinese influence in Venezuela, of Russian influence of Venezuela, talked about it as a program for America to assert itself in the Western Hemisphere. That's not the White House legal policy, but it's part of what has clearly been I think you've got to say, a multi-pronged strategy by the White House around this Venezuela action over the weekend.
Kira, drugs have been at the center of this, or so the administration has said. Obviously, we know that drug-related charges are mostly what Maduro is being booked for. But in addition to that, we had the buildup of troops nearby in the area, aircraft carriers moving there. We saw those strikes on these alleged drug trafficking boats. And so that's kind of been this stated goal and purpose. However, in the aftermath of this, oil has come up a lot. And the fact that the U.S. is going to take over these oil reserves, the president has said so many American countries are interested in investing in that infrastructure. Also maybe seems like a motive. We know there's certainly money to be made there. How do those things square?
Yeah, I mean, oil, that's a fascinating part of this. The Trump administration is talking about oil as part of this, if not a motive, that is part of the conversation that they are introducing. And what President Trump told Kristen Welker is that it's going to cost a lot of money to kind of get the Venezuelan oil industry going again, if you like, but that the U.S. will back U.S. oil companies in being able to do that. Just keep in mind that Venezuela has the biggest oil reserves in the world alongside Saudi Arabia. So there is a lot to play for here, if you like. But just back to the question of, for example, China, America's adversaries in all of this. The fact that, for example, Venezuela had this relationship with Russia. What you do, let's put aside the ethical or moral questions that people watching may understandably have. What you do if you take control of the Venezuelan oil industry is you make it more difficult, for example, for Venezuela to sell oil in yuan, in the Chinese currency, to China. Many commentators say, are supporting the dollar. So there are complex economic and, let's say, geopolitical issues here beneath the surface, and not beneath the surface. They're just being talked about openly.
Right. Keir Simmons, it's great to have you on set. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time this morning.
You bet.
Well, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche is defending the indictment against Nicolás Maduro. In an exclusive interview on NBC News Now's Top Story, Blanche insisted that the U.S. did not violate any laws when it arrested the Venezuelan leader. He told our Tom Llamas that the U.S. government's case is strong. Here's part of that interview.
Let's talk about the details of this case. The indictment reads sort of like a movie, if all that evidence is true. In your opinion, after seeing sort of the indictment, working on this case, what is the key piece of evidence? Even if the judge upholds this, how are you going to tie Maduro to all of this?
Well, when you say even if the judge upholds this, he's been indicted by a grand jury in New York for the second time. I mean, to be clear, what this 2025 indictment showed is that the conspiracy that was alleged up through 2020 when he was indicted the first time just didn't stop. He continued, as alleged, the work that he was doing, helping to orchestrate a major international infrastructure that brought tons and tons of cocaine to the United States. And he continued doing that, as alleged in the indictment, up until 2025. And so this is, like I said, he'll get his day in court with a jury of his peers in New York. And as alleged, like you said, it does read a little bit like a movie. This was an infrastructure and a very organized group of individuals from all over the world, different gangs and different terrorist organizations that work together to bring drugs into this country. And that's what I expect the evidence in trial will show.
Our thanks to Tom Llamas for bringing us that interview. You can catch the rest of that conversation with Todd Blanche on NBCNews.com. Well, for more on the legal fallout from Maduro's capture and then the subsequent arraignment yesterday, let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Misty Maris. Misty, good morning. Okay, let's start with Maduro's attorney, because we had a bunch of conversations yesterday. One of the big ones being who could represent him? How will that work? How will business be able to be done with him? We had so many questions surrounding this. Now we know who this person is, but we don't exactly know how this came to be, how Maduro will pay for legal services since he can't use what is essentially illegal funds. Tell us what we know here.
So we don't know exactly where the funding for his private attorneys. He's not using court-appointed attorneys, so we did hire, and this will be $1 million defense, Savannah, without a doubt, working on this case. So we don't know where the money comes from, but this is an issue that happens in a lot of these cases where there's an allegation of ill-gotten gains. There's this narco-terrorism scheme that's been going on for 25 years, and there's money that has been gained from it. And what can happen is the prosecutors can actually challenge the source of the income that is paying for legal services, and the defense would be required to show that it's coming from a legitimate source. So there could be many different things. Somebody could be funding it. Sometimes it's an issue for the court to open up funds to pay for legal fees. So that could be something we see coming down the pike. But what we do know is that there's two private attorneys, not court-appointed attorneys, involved. So this could be an issue that we see play out in the courthouse.
Misty, during yesterday's hearing, the attorney said that he might file motions pertaining to Maduro's role as the leader of a sovereign government. That was something that we discussed yesterday. Of course, that is not how the United States recognizes Maduro, but how does that move here? How does that affect the case?
I think there will almost certainly be a motion based on immunity for a head of state. And that would be an issue that the defense would be looking to throw out this case before it ever gets further in the courtroom. They will say that because Maduro is recognized in Venezuela and diplomatically recognized as the president, that he cannot be criminally charged for anything that he does in the course of that role. Obviously, the United States has a different perspective. They say has not been recognized as a legitimate leader since 2019. So that is going to be a critical issue and really a nuanced issue that's going to play out in the court. We don't know which way that's going to go. There is some legal precedent, so the prosecutors may have a bit of an upper hand, but this is something really to watch how that impacts the case moving forward. Or does it stop the case in its tracks?
Okay, so Misty, if we put a pin in that particular issue, this idea of being the leader of a sovereign nation, what else does a defense strategy look like here if you're his attorneys?
So if you're his attorneys, you're going to try and get this indictment tossed out on several legal grounds: violation of international law, violation of due process, and that sovereign immunity argument we just discussed, provided that this case makes it to trial, which is very likely that this case is going to survive those challenges. And then we're going to get into the courtroom. This is a trial. What's going to happen is the defense this is a conspiracy case, right? And we have Maduro as the kingpin. And in any case where you have this hierarchical organization, the biggest problem for prosecutors is tying that conduct, tying knowledge of conduct that he might not be directly engaged in to that person. So there's a lot of people usually in the middle who are doing the dirty work. So that's going to be where the defense will focus when this case gets into the courtroom and to trial.
Let's also, Misty, talk about the legal questions surrounding the U.S. attack in Venezuela that started this whole thing, that led to Maduro's capture. The Trump administration says it did not violate international law. Many global leaders say that Washington needs to justify its actions. There's questions, of course, even just from lawmakers here at home in Congress. Legally, what would justifying actions look like? What do they need to prove?
So this is basically we're dealing with a lot of issues at the same time. We have the issues which are relating to how this impacts Maduro's criminal case. That's one piece. The other piece is whether or not the primary purpose of this operation was to bring Maduro, a fugitive who's been indicted in the United States, to justice by removing him and bringing him to the Southern District to face prosecution. That's falls underneath the powers of the President of the United States. There's legal precedent for that. Or was this a military operation? Was this something to create a regime change? Was this an act of war, which would require congressional input and would have implications in international law? So that threshold question is, what's the purpose of this operation at the time?
Misty Maris, as always, we appreciate your time and your expertise. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, across the U.S., Venezuelans are celebrating the capture of deposed leader Nicolás Maduro. But there's also, of course, uncertainty about what comes next for the country. Here's NBC News correspondent George Solis with more.
Gracias. Gracias, America. Gracias, Army. Gracias, Donald Trump. Thank you so much.
Outside the New York courthouse, celebrations and protests. Meanwhile, in Miami, people draped in flags and hearts full of pride, taking to the streets to celebrate his capture over the weekend. How are you feeling?
Very exciting. It's a day very, very, very important for all the Venezuelan people. It's it's incredible.
The epicenter of the revelry in the city of Doral, commonly known as Venezuela, which is home to one of the largest populations of Venezuelans in the country.
Let's go everybody back to our country and start building a new country.
Every day when I wake up, I look at the phone and I'm waiting for this moment. Maduro is taken away from Venezuela. This is the greatest day of my life.
During Maduro's authoritarian regime, around 8 million Venezuelans have fled their country, with the New York Times estimating at least 1.1 million are here in the United States.
We needed this. We have been screaming freedom for a decade.
In Portland, Oregon, NBC's KGW spoke with a Venezuelan restaurant owner.
There's no other way of getting rid of this situation other than having a military intervention of extraction, because this is not a change of regime. We already decided about it on July 28, 2024. We decided to have him out massively, but he didn't listen to the people, and he also didn't listen to all the opportunities that he had to leave the country without being extracted.
Venezuela libre!
Joy and celebrations in Dallas, too, and in Pasadena, California.
It was so amazing to see something that we've been praying for years, a free Venezuela, and hopefully we're on the way to that with Maduro being captured.
But with that hope, also uncertainty for what comes next.
It's a lot of questions on the air, you know? It's a lot of questions. We don't know what is going to happen.
Back in Doral, generations of Venezuelans absorbing the historic moment. Dreams of returning to a home some never really knew, feeling like more of a reality, but in some ways, still just out of reach.
My dream is to maybe go one day and see where I was born, where I was raised half of my life, and maybe one day, but not right now, not right now.
George Solis, NBC News, Miami.
Well, both chambers of Congress are back in session today, and they're kicking off the new year with a busy calendar. Among the items on the long list of issues here, health care, government spending, and the Epstein files. But, of course, top of mind is the attack on Venezuela over the weekend. Top lawmakers appeared to remain divided along party lines on the legality of the president's actions after leaving a briefing on the operation yesterday.
As Speaker of the House, as the person who's in charge of defending Article 1 powers, I'm just going to insist to you that those have not been traversed in any way by what happened here. The president used his authority under the law.
Donald Trump does everything that he can to avoid Congress. I mean, that's what I feel. He doesn't think that Congress is relevant.
NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Melanie Zanona joins us now from Washington with more on this. Mel, good morning. So what more do we know first about this briefing, what lawmakers learned, and how they're responding to the president's actions?
Yeah, good morning, Savannah. Well, according to Democrats and even some Republicans, this briefing really left more questions than answers. Democrats left that briefing saying that the administration was really vague about their plans for running Venezuela, including the potential for boots on the ground. And they also said that they did not get assurances that the same thing wasn't going to happen in other countries like Cuba or Colombia. And so Democrats generally left that briefing very unsatisfied with the answers that they heard and also really worried about what comes next. But Republicans, by contrast, really rallied around the Trump administration. They said it was very clear in this briefing that this operation was justified and legal, in part because it mainly was a law enforcement operation. And they also insisted that this does not amount to a war, that we are not occupying the country, and that there's going to be a very limited role for the United States troops. But again, this was just a limited select group of lawmakers that got a briefing. The full House and the full Senate are expected to receive their briefing as soon as tomorrow, so we could get a fuller picture of where everything stands then.
Mel, now I want to talk about the possibility of another government shutdown. I think for a lot of people, those words might be like flashing alarm bells because we saw this happen. It was tough for a lot of Americans here. Congress has until January 30th to pass a new budget bill in order to keep things running. That major shutdown back in October impacted millions of Americans across the country. Are we headed there again?
You know, there are some really positive signs that look like we are going to avoid a government shutdown, starting with the fact that Democrats have very little appetite to use the same strategy. In fact, some of the players in the last shutdown fight say they don't want another shutdown fight. They're not going to run the same strategy. They're not going to link funding and healthcare together anymore. And there have been some signs that they are taking some big steps forward. In fact, they just released a package of funding bills, a couple of long-term funding bills that is expected to get a vote in the House later this week. But some of the trickiest long-term funding bills still remain to be written, remain to be hashed out. So there is quite a lot more work to do, but so far it's looking positive.
A major sticking point then, Mel, was healthcare. It's part of what kept the two sides from negotiating for so long here that led to that shutdown being as long as it was. And some of the facts are that at the end of last year, subsidies under Obamacare expired. That led to this sharp hike in premiums. A lot of people are fully aware of that. I don't need to tell them. Where do things stand this week?
Yeah, this is going to be a really big issue that Congress is going to have to tackle this month. The House is going to vote on a clean 3-year extension of the Obamacare subsidies on Thursday. That's because a group of moderate Republicans teamed up with Democrats to essentially go over leadership's head and force a floor vote on this issue. But the Senate already rejected a similar proposal in December. So the real question is whether the Senate is going to feel compelled to come together and find a deal that can actually pass both chambers and appease both parties. There have been some bipartisan talks over the break. They've continued this week. And even GOP leader John Thune said there is some hope that they can come to a compromise. But given that those subsidies have already expired and that premiums have already skyrocketed for millions of Americans, time is really of the essence here.
Mel, finally, quickly, before I let you go, I do want to ask you about the Epstein files. They continue to be a major focus in Washington because the Justice Department failed to meet this deadline to release all of the files connected to him by the end of last year, end of 2025. Millions of files, of course, have yet to be released. How's the Justice Department defending this delay, and what's the latest from lawmakers on this front?
Well, the DOJ has really only released 1% of the total files that they have in their possession. But that's because they say they are still reviewing the files and that even though they had 30 days technically to release all these files since the law was passed, that they only recently came out or identified an additional 1 million documents that they initially did not review. So that is why there's been a holdup. Lawmakers say this puts them out of compliance with the law. However, there's very little recourse among lawmakers to actually force the DOJ to speed up its review.
Savannah. Right, Mel, covering a lot for us today. Thank you so much. Well, today marks 5 years since the January 6th attack on our nation's capital, an event that continues to cast a shadow over politics in the U.S. Well, to mark the occasion, House Democrats plan to hold an unofficial hearing later today where they say they will set the record straight on that day. They have asked former members of law enforcement and others who were at the Capitol to testify. For more, let's bring in NBC News senior justice reporter Ryan Riley, who joins us from Washington, D.C. Ryan, good morning. So do we know who the Democrats are planning to have at today's meeting? And I mentioned unofficial. What exactly does that mean? What's the goal here?
Yeah, essentially because Democrats don't have any real powers, they're making this an unofficial hearing. But what they're going to do is bring forward, some people who have expertise on this, some of the officers who suffered that day, and as well as they're bringing forward one of the January 6th riders themselves who have actually had a sort of change of heart on the issue and now believes that it was a brutal attack, sort of shares in the reality of the day's events rather than some of the conspiracy theories about the day's events that many of the rioters have now indulged in. And, it comes at a time when a lot of the rioters want compensation for what happened to them because they see this as government overreach. Their own prosecution as government overreach. A lot of them believe in some of these conspiracy theories about that day that have fed into this ongoing narrative that something unjust was done, that this was somehow not what it appeared to be, and not sort of the images that you're seeing on videotape there, but this was some sort of deep state setup, is what a lot of these rioters believe.
Ryan, also yesterday, Democrats on the House Judiciary Committee released 2 new reports examining the aftermath of the attack. Did it give us any new information, and does it give us more insight into what we can expect to hear today?
Yeah, they did highlight a lot of the individuals who actually have gone on to commit separate crimes after the attack on the Capitol. There have been at least 33 who were separately charged. Some of those crimes came before, some came after. Some of them are related to child pornography. There's actually one individual in Florida who was arrested because he said that he allegedly abused a minor and then promised that the payment that he sees himself getting in the future from the Trump administration would potentially be used to pay off that minor victim. And so a lot of these individuals have been charged separately. And, it's not a huge surprise when you have such a large contingent of convicted criminals that a lot of them are going to go on to reoffend. And so one of the biggest cases was actually someone who is now in prison who actually plotted to murder the FBI agents who investigated them for January 6th. They are actually still now behind bars.
We know President Trump, though, did pardon January 6th rioters, as you mentioned, on his first day back in office. Tell us what else, though, he's done related to the siege on the Capitol, sort of in retrospect.
Yeah, well, a January 6th defendant is now inside the Justice Department, for one, working on a report that sort of fits along with this narrative, or at least aiding in the report that fits along with this narrative that a lot of the Trump supporters and January 6th defendants are trying to promote, that this was some sort of, deep state effort to get them. And, that's just not what was bared out in court. I sat through countless hours of these hearings, and judges have been have laid out exactly what happened that day, and they are the ones who know these cases the best. A lot of the prosecutors have been fired who are involved in these cases. A lot of the FBI agents who are involved have been targeted by the administration. That's been an internal source of controversy. So there's a lot of efforts that the Trump administration is making to erase what happened that day.
Ryan Riley, thank you very much. Well, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz has said he is ending his re-election bid and is not seeking a third term. Walz, who was the Democratic vice presidential nominee last year, as you probably remember, has been criticized by Republicans for how he handled allegations of fraud involving the state's social safety net programs. He has said the state is taking action to prevent future fraud, pointing to changes in how the issue has been tackled. Well, in a statement released yesterday, Walz acknowledged that the investigations did play a role in his choice. He said, quote, "Every minute I spend defending my own political interests would be a minute I can't spend defending the people of Minnesota against the criminals who prey on our generosity and the cynics who prey on our differences." Let's get you some weather now. We've got a wintry mix of rain, sleet, and snow that it could impact parts of the Midwest to the Northeast. Angie Lastman's here in studio with more. Hi, Angie. Good morning.
Hi, Savannah. Good morning to you. We've got some things that could slow you down on the roadways or maybe even air travel when it comes to wintry weather across parts of the Great Lakes and New England specifically. 20 million people are under these winter weather advisories. That does include Minneapolis, Green Bay, parts of northern Michigan, and then stretching out to Boston and up into Maine. So here's what we've got right now. You can see exactly that wintry mix kind of working across the Great Lakes, eventually going to slide into parts of the Northeast and leave us with, again, some slick travel, some rain, some ice, some snow, all of it on the table for both of these locations. Those slick conditions lasting anywhere from Wisconsin to Maine through the day today. And then by the time tomorrow rolls through, this storm is going to work quickly off the coast, still leaving us with some additional snow and some lingering snow showers here across parts of northern New England for tomorrow. But those slick conditions will remain and potentially some of those minor travel delays. Between now and Wednesday, picking up a good dose of snow across specifically New England, up to 5 inches in some locations. Those higher elevations, of course, going to get the higher amounts, but still we'll see some ice accumulations as well. That goes for parts of the Great Lakes, again, parts of Wisconsin and Michigan, but also New England, up to 1/10 of an inch in some of these locations. So again, the slick travel, something we're concerned about as we get through at least tomorrow morning. Meanwhile, out west, gearing up for this next Pacific storm, I feel like a broken record at this point, but Washington and Oregon going to be the spots that we see the most significant rainfall as well as mountain snow. Northern California could potentially see a bit of that working in for tomorrow into parts of the northern Sierra and Great Basin. Otherwise, those showers will continue, rain showers, I should say, will continue across the coast, picking up additional rain for our friends out there. And by the time we get through again midweek, we're going to see a couple more inches of rain tallying up for folks across Washington and Oregon. Closer to the coast is where we'll see those higher amounts through the middle of the work week. And then snowfall, a lot of folks are excited for some snowfall, especially across the Rockies. We could use some of that. The Cascades will pick up some, maybe a foot, maybe a 1.5 feet in some of those higher elevations.
All right, it's that time of year. Angie, thank you so much. There's much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, ex-officer on trial. Opening statements set for today in the trial of a former police officer charged in the deadly Uvalde school shooting. We will have the latest. But first, though, after the break, the Pentagon moves to punish Democratic Senator Mark Kelly over a video message. More on the unprecedented action when we come back. We are back with a look at the unprecedented effort by the Pentagon to punish Democratic Senator Mark Kelly over a controversial video he was part of. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth announced yesterday that he would formally censure Senator Kelly over this November post. In it, you might remember, the former Navy pilot and other Democratic lawmakers urged U.S. service members not to comply with illegal orders. Now, Kelly's rank and his retirement pay are also at stake. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Julie Sirkin has the details.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth announcing the Pentagon is working to slash Senator Mark Kelly's military retirement rank and pay because of, quote, seditious statements.
We want to speak directly to members of the military.
Hegseth referring to this video posted by a group of Democratic lawmakers, including Kelly, in November.
This administration is pitting our uniformed military
and intelligence community professionals
against American citizens.
The lawmakers telling U.S. service members they can stand up to illegal orders, pointing to the Trump administration's use of the military in American cities.
Laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
Pete Hegseth citing U.S. code, saying his department has initiated retirement grade determination proceedings with a reduction in Kelly's retired grade, resulting in a corresponding reduction in retired pay. Senator Kelly, a retired U.S. Navy captain, firing back, writing in his own post, "I will fight this with everything I've got, not for myself, but to send a message back that Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump don't get to decide what Americans in this country get to say about their government." Hegseth is using an armed forces law that says a retired grade of any officer may be reopened if the applicable secretary determines, pursuant to regulations prescribed by the Secretary of Defense, that good cause exists.
To bring something like that against a retiree for something he said, much less a U.S. senator, that's pretty unprecedented.
Joseph Areno worked as an Army lawyer for more than 25 years.
So you cannot engage in certain kinds of activities that could result in a reduction, and one of them is sedition. And that seems like where the Defense Department is going with this.
Do you think that the Defense Department will have success ultimately?
If I were Senator Kelly's defense lawyer, I'd have a field day with this. When you talk about sedition, you almost always talk about violence, right? The violent overthrow of the U.S. government. It's not what happened here, obviously.
This recently resurfaced video from 2016 shows Hegseth himself addressing the military's right to refuse unlawful orders.
If you're doing something that is just completely unlawful and ruthless, then there is a consequence for that. That's why the military said it won't follow unlawful orders from their commander-in-chief.
The White House telling NBC News that Hegseth has been consistent. As he said, the military already has clear procedures for handling unlawful orders. The Pentagon's move setting up a rare fight, pitting the Defense Department against a sitting senator.
All right, thanks, Julie Sirkin, for that report. Coming up, continuing coverage out of Venezuela. Shots fired near the presidential palace just after the country's interim leader was sworn in. We'll bring you an update from South America next on Morning News Now. Welcome back. Venezuela is on edge this morning after gunfire was heard near the presidential palace. This was just hours after Delcy Rodriguez was sworn in as interim president. It comes amid growing uncertainty over Venezuela's future after the U.S. attacked the country and captured its leader, Nicolás Maduro, and his wife, Celia Flores. They, of course, were brought to the U.S. to face drug-related charges, with both pleading not guilty during their first court appearance yesterday. NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez joins us from Colombia's border with Venezuela. Gabe, good morning. What more can you tell us first about this gunfire that was heard in the capital?
Oh, hi there, Savannah. Good morning. The gunfire rang out near the presidential palace in Caracas, and witnesses say that security forces were firing at unspecified, unidentified drones. Now, two White House officials tell NBC News that the U.S. was not involved. So there's still a lot of questions about what exactly happened. However, it really speaks to just how on edge this entire region is, especially inside Venezuela following the capture of Nicolás Maduro and that U.S. operation.
And Gabe, we know as you get any more information, you'll bring it to us. But we also saw Delcy Rodriguez being sworn in as interim president yesterday. I mean, this gunfire was just hours after that. She, of course, was Maduro's vice president. How is she expected to navigate the next few days and weeks? Tell us what her message was to the U.S. and how people there in Venezuela are receiving this fact that she is now the interim president, a sort of an extension of the Maduro regime.
Well, Savannah, right. Well, she is walking a very fine line, Savannah. You're right. Rodriguez, initially after the attacks, she described the U.S. operation as a barbaric attack. She was she condemned it, and she softened her tone just a bit on Sunday, releasing a statement saying that she was looking to collaborate with the U.S. Now, the White House, the Trump administration has said that she's on board with what the U.S. is trying to do. But again, she's walking a very fine line here. What's also interesting, Savannah, is a U.S. official tells NBC News that a recent classified intelligence assessment by the U.S. determined that Rodriguez and other top members of the Maduro regime were actually best positioned to lead this government going forward and maintain stability. And that was a factor in why President Trump did not back the opposition leader, Machado. So moving forward, it is unclear what Rodriguez's relationship with the United States will be, but the White House is insisting that she will help the U.S. As we move forward here.
Gabe, also tell us what you're seeing on the ground. I mean, it's incredible that we have you there. You're able to report on the situation right at this border, as close as you can get, basically. What are you hearing from Venezuelans who are, some fleeing their country, or maybe those who want to return now?
Well, Savannah, there's a profound sense of uncertainty here, as we were just discussing. It's unclear what happens in Venezuela in the weeks and months ahead. Yes, this is the border. This is the Colombian border with Venezuela. Thousands of Venezuelans cross through here each day, some to visit family members, some to work. Some now also are leaving for good while all this uncertainty plays out. We spoke with one family yesterday that was really shaken up. They were overwhelmed over the recent events. They were coming with luggage. They were trying to live with family members here in Colombia. They weren't sure when they were going to return to Venezuela, but they were also very reluctant to speak on camera and say anything critical of the government because they still have family members inside Venezuela. And to that end, Savannah, what we were discussing about Delcy Rodriguez, the Venezuelan government has actually issued a decree as well. Even though she's offering to collaborate with the U.S., this decree orders police to arrest anyone inside Venezuela that is seen as supporting the U.S. attack in any way, who's involved in supporting the U.S. attack in any way. So that's likely one of the reasons why you haven't seen any anti-Maduro demonstrations inside the country.
Such important color from the ground, Gabe. Also, quickly, the Trump administration threatening other countries in the area, like where you are in Colombia, like Mexico, like Cuba. How's the region responding?
Well, certainly a war of words of sorts is erupting between President Trump and Colombia's President Gustavo Petro. Let's see, President Trump says that the government in Cuba will likely soon fall. He has railed against the government of Mexico for its alleged involvement with drug cartels. And yes, he has said that the Colombian president is, quote, a sick man involved in drug trafficking. Sharp responses from all of those governments denouncing U.S. involvement in the region.
All right. Gabe Gutierrez, thank you very much. Fantastic reporting. And we'll have more, of course, on that top story throughout the morning. But closer to home, opening statements are expected to start in Texas today for the criminal trial against a former police officer charged in the deadly Uvalde school shooting back in 2022. Adrian Gonzalez is accused of failing to protect the children during the attack after police took more than an hour to confront the shooter that day. He's pleaded not guilty to 29 counts of child abandonment or endangerment. Gonzalez was one of the first of nearly 400 officers to respond to the mass shooting at Robb Elementary that killed 19 students and 2 teachers. NBC News correspondent Ryan Chandler is live outside the courthouse in Corpus Christi, where that trial is being held. Ryan, good morning. So let's start with that. The defense requested the trial be moved there to Corpus Christi because they didn't think Gonzalez would get a fair trial in Uvalde. Jury selection wrapped up yesterday. What can we expect in court today?
Well, Savannah, good morning. This is a day for which so many families for more than 3 years now have held their breath. We've documented for years now the delayed police response at Robb Elementary on May 24th, 2022. And families have been calling for accountability for the officers that responded ever since. Well, today we see the first trial of 2 officers who were actually criminally indicted for their actions or inactions that day. It's been a very long process to get here, and today we're going to hear the opening statements. It was a very long day yesterday, whittling through a massive jury pool of almost 500 people. It was about an 11-hour process. Now we know that we have the 12 jurors who will take the stand. They include 11 women, 5 men, 10 middle-aged people, 2 of them older, 3 of them in their 30s. So we're getting a little sense of the demographics of who will make the very consequential decision of whether an officer like Gonzalez can be held criminally responsible for the actions they did or did not take during an emergency like this, Savannah.
All right, Ryan Chandler, thank you very much for your reporting on this. Coming up, a controversial overhaul by the CDC. Federal vaccine restrictions on childhood vaccines being rolled back. More on the move and what parents need to know. You're watching Morning News Now. We're back with new details about unprecedented changes to childhood vaccines. Yesterday, the Centers for Disease Control announced it is scaling back the immunization schedule for children, recommending all children now get vaccines for 11 diseases rather than 18. The new schedule will now more closely resemble guidelines that are used in Denmark. It breaks up vaccines into 3 categories: vaccines for all children, vaccines for those who are high risk, and vaccines based on shared clinical decision-making. That really just means doctors and parents decide together what is best based on a child's health. We have NBC News medical contributor Dr. Natalie Azar here to break it all down for us. Dr. Azar, good morning.
Good morning.
Great to have you with us. So many questions about this. So this went into effect immediately. Yeah. Which vaccines now do fall into this category, which means they are no longer recommended for all children? So going from 18 to 11, what are those 7 in the middle?
Okay, so the 7 in the middle, which actually made things a little bit complicated, they include RSV, hepatitis B, meningococcus. So these are the ones that are recommended, the ones that our viewers can see. This hasn't changed, and this will make a lot of people happy that for MMR and for chickenpox and pneumococcal and polio, that's all still there. The ones that shifted over to you're either getting it if you're high risk or with shared decision-making include things like meningococcus, hepatitis A and B, rotavirus, RSV, which really confused people. I think I want to clarify that for folks. The RSV recommendations actually didn't change. But the big one here is flu. Flu, which we used to universally say the CDC recommends a flu shot for everyone 6 months and older. Flu has now been shifted over to the category of shared decision-making. Their rationale for this, their argument for this was weak. At best, I should say, we know from years of data that the vast majority of children who die from flu are unvaccinated. So as you can imagine, infectious disease, public health, pediatricians have reacted quite strongly to these changes.
Yeah, absolutely, including the American Academy of Pediatrics describing these changes dangerous and unnecessary. Tell me more about that reaction and the CDC's explanation for doing this.
So I was on the American Academy of Pediatrics call yesterday, and in addition to what you described, one quotation that I had to write down was Dr. O'Leary, who said that this would be humorous if it wasn't so tragic. And especially, again, like sort of sowing this confusion in the midst of a terrible flu season. Their rationale for doing it, Savannah, is to sow more trust in the process. They cited data that since the pandemic, trust in vaccines and in the government and CDC dropped so dramatically, and that they were trying to restore the trust. The data that they use, the science, the literature, the studies that they use to support some of their recommendations have been deemed, inadequate, not really robust, faulty at best. And so, again, what we truly believe is that this is just sort of consistent with an agenda from this HHS to reduce the number of vaccines, to try to sort of, at one point in their documentation, they actually said that maybe it's the vaccines that are part of the reason that we have a chronic disease epidemic in this country. So just nothing that most of us in the medical profession regard as rigorous science and evidence-based recommendations.
I guess, though, to ask a question, because I just mentioned this fact a moment ago, some viewers might be hearing like, okay, well, it doesn't sound bad if we're going to resemble somewhere like Denmark. This is being something similar. This schedule is being used somewhere else. Yeah. I believe successfully. I don't know necessarily the rates of sickness in Denmark for children, but how do you explain something like that? Or for people who are sort of like, I do want less vaccination for my child, and they hear a fact like that, how do you square that?
The explanation that we have are sort of, to us, it really is like comparing apples and oranges. Comparing our United States to a country like Denmark that has a vastly different medical and health and public health infrastructure, universal health care, amazing preventive care, so that if children develop a childhood illness that is vaccine preventable, there is care for them. That's not the case here in this country. That's a great point. We know that there are millions of children who don't have health insurance. And so for people like that, for children in our country, vaccination is at a minimum an initial layer of protection. And so that's why it's like you can't compare. We in this country, with the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, every single year they relook at the vaccine schedule, and there is input from experts. There was no input from experts. This was all done independently from RFK's handpicked crew, who are currently the head of CDC and the FDA and all of that.
Practically speaking, what does this mean? Parents can do, should do, are able to do?
Okay. The number one thing is please have a conversation with your pediatrician. In all likelihood, they will have a conversation with you and say, for example, with rotavirus, a vaccine that they are now saying is one for shared decision making. Without vaccination, 50 to 60 children die every year. That data alone should be enough for parents to say, why would I do that? I'm going to vaccinate my kids. So that's really my message to folks, is to please have a conversation with your pediatrician. These vaccines should still be covered. We were reassured that would be the case.
By insurance.
By insurance. But, with insurance.
We'll keep an eye on that. Yeah, exactly. Dr. Azar, thank you so much. We'll see you next hour. Okay. Well, moving from your health to your wallet for a look at some of Wall Street's headlines. We're going to start with an unlikely twist following the arrest and arraignment of Nicolás Maduro. This morning, the deposed Venezuelan leader is lighting up social media for his sense of style. NBC News business and economy reporter Emily Lorsch has your Money Minute. Emily, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning to you. That stunning arrest is turning global headlines into a fashion frenzy. After U.S. forces captured Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro, President Trump posted a photo showing the leader in a gray Nike tech fleece. That image sent Google searches and social media chatter surging, with posts, memes, and TikToks all reacting to that outfit. The jacket is now sold out in several sizes. And a major pillar of public media is signing off after nearly 6 decades. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting has voted to dissolve after Congress cut more than $1 billion in funding, ending the nonprofit that helps support NPR, PBS, and more than 1,500 local stations. The organization's leaders say without funding, staying open would not serve the public interest. Finally, Chick-fil-A is turning 80, and it's celebrating in a big way, launching a year-long campaign called Nostalgia. It includes retro packaging, collectible cups, themed merchandise, and a chance for 3,000 customers to win free Chick-fil-A for a year. As fast food chains ramp up competition for increasingly choosy customers, these new ads, permanent and limited time items could give the restaurant the push it needs in 2026. Savannah, I'm just thinking about free anything for a year and any restaurant you choose, and that sounds awesome.
It sure does. Emily, thank you. Coming up, a mental health reset. The first week of 2026 is the first time to rethink your priorities and put you first. We are going to check in with an expert for tips on how to start and how you can keep it going year-round. This is Morning News Now. Welcome back. It is the start of a new year, and many of us could probably use a mental health makeover. In fact, prioritizing mental health is now actually one of the most popular New Year's resolutions. It is right up there with fitness and finances. Dr. Robbie Ludwig joins us now with some tips on how to get into the right headspace to transform your well-being. She's our friend and a psychotherapist and also host of the Pivot with Dr. Robbie Ludwig podcast. Dr. Robbie, always great to have you with us. Good morning. So first, let's just talk about that fact right there, that people are prioritizing this, taking this more seriously than before. Tell us what you're seeing.
Well, I think mental health and feeling good is a priority for many people, understandably so. And we've lifted the stigma that mental health had in the past and treating it. And so one of the big things people are doing now is you need to look backwards in order to look forwards. Look at what you did right in 2025, figure out what worked for you then and bring that into the new year. This helps us to utilize our wisdom and also keep us in touch with our values and goals and think about what's next for you, building on the old and creating the new.
Dr. Robbie, so give us some tips here, because I think that's a great one, by the way. Let's start there. Looking back before you look ahead, what do I want to edit and how do I do that? Sometimes, though, let's talk through like the reality of this, right? First of all, maybe you're going to fall off the train like by February, but we don't want to do that on something as important as our mental health. I think this is also a daunting one where, you know, it's not quite the same as like, you know, eat more fruits and veggies and make sure you get to the gym a couple times a week. There's some nuance here, and I think it takes sometimes even professional help. What are some of the most effective research-backed ways to transform our lives and keep our mental health top of mind this year?
So micro steps is backed by science. When you take little steps towards your goals, that way we get to feel our success better. And specific micro goals work much better than when you just have looser goals. So for example, you might say, take a 10-minute walk most days of the week. Practice deep breathing after work. Stay connected to family and friends. Maybe you call a friend once every other week and make sure that you're staying connected. And you can identify when you're accomplishing these goals, and success again builds on success. When we see that we're moving towards our goals, they don't feel overwhelming, which can paralyze us. And that what contributes to us not reaching our goals because we get overwhelmed and stuck.
Oh, absolutely. Dr. Robbie, when would you recommend that somebody take the step of seeking professional help when it comes to their mental health, which could be done in many forms with many different types of doctors, many different types of appointments, but when would that be the right call?
So lifestyle recommendations: are you sleeping well? Are you moving? Are you eating well? Are you connecting with the community? Are you being optimistic? If you've tried all of this and you still are feeling down, if it lasts for 2 weeks or more, that's usually when we recommend that you see a professional for an evaluation to see if you need psychotherapy, medication interventions, or maybe it's just different changes that you make into your lifestyle that can really make the difference.
Dr. Robbie Ludwig, you're getting us in good mental fitness, good mental shape. We appreciate it as always, and Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And that is going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now, but do not go anywhere. The news continues right now. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us this Tuesday. I'm Savannah Sellers. Joe is on assignment. Right now on Morning News Now, not guilty plea in historic scenes. Venezuela's deposed president, Nicolás Maduro, has declared he is innocent alongside his wife, Celia Flores, in a New York courtroom. Maduro telling a federal judge he was kidnapped by the U.S. days after his capture when troops attacked the South American country. And the Trump administration facing mounting questions over that operation. We've got analysis on what unfolded in the courtroom and the response from around the world. Also this morning, back in session. Congress is back in Washington this week as lawmakers kick off the new year with a long list of issues to address, including government spending, health care, and the Epstein files. Plus, today marks 5 years since rioters stormed the nation's capital. How Democrats are marking the occasion coming up. And Syria's surge. New government data shows flu cases are continuing to rise as millions of Americans return to work and school after the holidays. We'll talk to one of our medical experts about the symptoms to look out for and how to best protect yourself later this hour. And finally, tax time. Almost. The 2026 filing season is right around the corner. We've got all the tips you need on the steps you can take now to prepare and make this your most painless season yet. We'll give that a shot, and sorry to already start that in January. Thanks again for being with us. We are going to begin this hour with the latest developments out of Venezuela. The South American country is on edge this morning after gunfire was heard near the presidential palace in the capital, Caracas. It comes after captured leader Nicolás Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, made their first court appearance in New York following that U.S. attack on Venezuela. Both pleaded not guilty to drug-related charges. NBC News senior Washington correspondent Hallie Jackson starts us off. Hallie, good morning.
Hey there, good morning to you. And this morning, Nicolás Maduro and his wife are behind bars on U.S. soil after that arraignment, a routine court proceeding, but in this instance, extraordinary, given the defendant, his defiance, and the international spotlight, with the Trump administration ramping up its threats beyond Venezuela, a region on edge. Overnight, gunfire erupting near the presidential palace in Venezuela's capital city. Witnesses saying security forces fired at unidentified drones. Two White House officials telling NBC News the U.S. was not involved. The tension in Caracas coming with Venezuela's now captured leader 2,000 miles away in New York. Deposed President Nicolás Maduro flashing a thumbs up before court and defiant during it, telling a federal judge he had been kidnapped and captured by the U.S., declaring in Spanish, "I am a prisoner of war," adding, "I'm innocent. I am a decent man. I am still the president of my country." Maduro's wife, Celia Flores, at his side with bandages on her head. At one point, an outburst from the gallery, a Venezuelan man telling Maduro, "You will pay." Maduro responding, "I will be free." President Trump, in an exclusive interview with NBC's Kristen Welker, calling the arraignment an extraordinary moment, insisting the U.S. is not at war with Venezuela, only with people that sell drugs, as questions build about the legality of the U.S. operation to extract Maduro and his wife to face those drug trafficking charges.
This was well within the president's Article 2 powers. It was a law enforcement function to arrest indicted individuals in Venezuela.
Trump officials late Monday delivering a classified briefing to the group of top congressional lawmakers, Speaker Mike Johnson defending the president's use of force in Venezuela.
We are not at war. We do not have U.S. armed forces in Venezuela, and we are not occupying that country.
But some Democrats critical.
They can't explain in clear terms how this helps the national security of the American people in any way, shape, or form.
But the Trump White House asserting its power in the region.
The United States of America is running Venezuela.
And farther afield, top advisor Stephen Miller doubling down after President Trump left the door open on a potential push to take over the territory of Greenland, currently controlled by Denmark.
The United States should have Greenland as part of the United States.
And in a new statement just this morning, European allies highlight the need for security in the Arctic region. They say they've been stepping up on that front, but add that it is for Denmark and Greenland, and them only, to decide on matters related to Denmark and Greenland. As for Nicolás Maduro, we expect to see him back in court in mid-March. Back to you.
All right, Hallie, thank you. Well, for more on the legal fallout from this U.S.-Venezuela operation, we are joined by NBC News legal analyst Danny Spallestani. Good morning. Great to have you with us. So you actually, we had you here on set with us yesterday. Then you made your way downtown. You were outside the courthouse. You told me it was quite a scene, which is interesting in and of itself. Walk us through the hearing and what we know about Maduro's legal team. That was one of the big questions that we had yesterday.
That's right. It was a big question I had because I know to some degree the U.S. may have seized or frozen assets of the Maduros. And given that they were just flown up in a matter of hours to the United States, they might actually, in theory, have to have a court-appointed or the public defender represent them at the arraignment. But that was not the case. They secured very able counsel. For example, Maduro is represented by Julian Assange's former attorney, a very respected attorney in this jurisdiction and beyond. So they both have good, able counsel. Maduro's wife now has a former federal prosecutor out of Texas. Again, very good reputation. So they have their legal defense team, at least the beginnings of it. I expect that team to grow as time goes on. Yesterday, just an arraignment, pretty straightforward. Not guilty pleas entered, information about bail, motions, hearings, and where we go next, scheduling mostly. So not a very significant substantive event yesterday.
There's questions about how those legal teams can be paid, though, right?
Exactly right. So the extent to which the U.S. government may have frozen or seized or forfeited assets of a defendant, and oftentimes this comes up, the government may say, hey, the money that you do have, we are now deciding that that is money we are going to seize or forfeit, so you can't use it for legal fees. It's actually a really big issue for criminal defense attorneys like me when someone is looking to hire us for a federal criminal matter.
Absolutely. How do you start to build a defense in a case like this?
There are two major prongs to this case. Okay. The first is the inevitable motions that the defense is going to file, for example, to argue that the seizure was unlawful and therefore the prosecution cannot go forward, or, for example, that the Maduros have head of state immunity, another issue that is going to be the subject of pretrial motions. But beyond that, if those are denied, the rest of the case, the substance of it, is a pretty straightforward guns guns and drugs case, the kind that are prosecuted hundreds, if not thousands of times a year here in the United States, not only in federal court, but in state court as well.
Very interesting. As I mentioned, hundreds of people outside the courthouse yesterday. You said it was one of the biggest scenes you've actually ever seen, outside of it having been there many times. Some in support of the U.S. operation, some more wary. How, Danny, could something like that impact, what's going on inside a courtroom? Just like the visceral public reaction, regardless of which side of this you're on, regardless of somebody's perspective. Is there a chance that this affects Maduro's case and trial? I'm thinking of something similar just in terms of so much public input, like what we saw with Luigi Mangione. Does something like that come into play at all inside the walls of the courtroom?
Yeah, something I thought about yesterday is that the government had to choose a venue for their case. Arguably, they could have filed in any district in the nation if the theory is that the Maduro's conduct affected the U.S. virtually everywhere as a whole. So it's an interesting choice for New York because you have to consider the jury pool and how many of those folks may have strong opinions about Venezuela, or more specifically, may have family from Venezuela or are from Venezuela themselves. And one of the takeaways from yesterday is that there is a very vocal group of the Venezuelan diaspora here in the United States and in the New York City area, if not immediately in Manhattan, but if not there, then close by, because they were out in force yesterday. Very vocal, very peaceful, but also very, very audible.
There are so many questions surrounding this. A lot of, it seems to me anyway, a legal precedent that could be set. What do you think is like the biggest thing that could be the takeaway here, no matter which way this goes?
Yeah, it won't be precedent that's set in the underlying prosecution. As I said before, this is really just a straight up guns and drugs case. The real question that has to be answered, and will likely be answered by the U.S. Supreme Court, I think, is going to be whether or not this extraction of Maduro from Venezuela was lawful. And then that even has a secondary question, because there's a line of authority that says, hey, it really doesn't matter if your seizure in some other country was unlawful. As long as you're here, it doesn't matter how you got here, the U.S. can prosecute you. So that's a secondary issue, that even if his seizure, his apprehension was unlawful, whether or not his prosecution can still go forward here in the U.S. I don't think the district court is likely to dismiss it, but on appeal, if they can get an appeal up to the Supreme Court or even the Court of Appeals, that could be an issue. But if Maduro loses there, he likely loses the case.
Danny Ceballos, as always, we appreciate you. Well, in Washington, Congress returns to work this week with a long list of issues to address. What happened in Venezuela being one of them. Health care, government spending, the Epstein files. That's just some of the items on the docket. All of this, as today, marks 5 years since the January 6th riot, which is once again highlighting deep political divisions in Congress. NBC News Chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles joins us on this. Ryan, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning. And there is faint hope that Republicans and Democrats will come together to find a path forward on health care. But health care is an example of an issue that is difficult for the two sides to find common ground, in part because of the divide that exists 5 years after January 6th.
2026 is off and running, and Congress has no time to spare.
We still have work to do to get as many full-year appropriation bills as possible across the finish line for fiscal year 2026.
The longest government shutdown in history left a number of issues unfinished, including a long-term plan for government funding and health care.
The tip of the spear for so many people when it comes to costs, of course, is health care.
This week, the House will vote on a 2-year extension of the enhanced premium subsidies tied to the Affordable Care Act. If it passes, it could open the door to more extensive negotiations on health care reform. But while there could be progress on health care, the same cannot be said on the release of the Epstein files. The Department of Justice promised to release all the files by the end of 2025. But now they say they're still pouring through more than 2 million documents for release. Democrats say they are in violation of the law, and that Republicans are trying to change the subject.
They've managed to focus attention and distract from the pressing needs of the American people and the Epstein file.
Congress returns to work on the 5th anniversary of a fateful day. The attack on the Capitol on January 6th is still viewed differently by Republicans and Democrats, making basic legislating a challenge.
We all lived through it, or a whole bunch of us lived through it, and even then people are denying it with all kinds of absolutely incontrovertible evidence.
Democrats will hold a hearing today to remind Americans of the attack. Congressman Jamie Raskin, who served on the committee that investigated the riot, believes despite President Trump's resistance, there is broad public agreement around what happened that day.
The vast majority of the American people never want it to happen again.
And Republican leadership has no events planned to mark the January 6th anniversary. House members instead plan to hold a retreat at the newly renamed Trump Kennedy Center, though a formal name change of the center would require legislation, which hasn't happened yet. Meanwhile, that vote on extending the Obamacare subsidies in the House is expected by the end of the week. It would still need to pass the Senate, but instead leaders believe it will instead lead to renewed talks about a long-term solution. Savannah?
All right, Ryan Nobles, lawmakers are back. Means it's time for you to get your steps in. Thanks. We appreciate your reporting. Well, now let's take an in-depth look at the legacy of those riots on January 6th. We're going to bring in NBC News law enforcement analyst Evie Pumpour. She's also a former Secret Service special agent. Good morning. Thank you, as always, for being here. We love when you join us and so appreciate your expertise on something like this. I mean, there's been a lot of talk, right, around the perceived gaps in security that meant that exactly what you're seeing on your screen right now was even possible. What do you think was the biggest lesson to come out of that day from a security perspective?
You know, I'm going to say this because I want to be honest, complacency. When nothing happens for a really long time and you're just in that repetitive motion of doing the same thing over and over again, you think everything's fine. And I really, at the end, when you look at the core of what happened, it was all these things. So let's look at a couple of issues that were examined as to what happened. One was intelligence, the lack of intelligence, communication between FBI, sending information there. FBI said, you know, nothing that we saw was really that credible. But even within Capitol Police, they had some intelligence within their intelligence kind of system that something was going to happen, that plans were being shared online, and they never communicated it to their own people. The other issue is putting a plan in place proactively. What ended up happening is they tried to get help after it happened. That's extremely hard. That's when they tried to get the National Guard. And even then, trying to get the National Guard, there was a system that was put in place that doesn't allow the chief of police there to be able to get those assets. So there was a delay. So you have that. The other thing is lack of training. When you're dealing with riots or protesters, that's a different animal. Even in the U.S. Secret Service, we've received a lot of training because it's one thing for me to go arrest somebody and deal with a criminal. It's another thing to deal with civilians. Are you going to shoot civilians, right, if they're doing something like that? So that brings me to lack of equipment. That was another big complaint that they had. Helmets, even less than lethal munition, beanbags, pellets, pepper bullets, right? Things that you can do to mitigate and incapacitate people without using lethal force. Even when they actually tried to access some of that equipment, it was locked in a trailer off-site, so they couldn't even get to it. So you have all these things. Another issue, lack of communication. Because it was all hands on deck, there was nobody relaying information on the radios. All these things compounded caused this issue. So now what's happened? Well, the upper echelons at Capitol Police, essentially all gone, resigned, let go. So you're looking at new people coming in. They made a lot of changes. Training, consistent training, not just getting training when you go that one time to the academy and then never deal with that. Equipment coming in, being able to put a plan in place. And then also, when you have this electoral vote happen now every January 6th, every couple of years when you have an election, and it's now designated as an NSSE event, which means the United States Secret Service comes in and puts the plan in place. One big issue was there was no cohesive plan. What do we do? Let's put a plan in place for something like this. Now the U.S. Secret Service, which is really extraordinary at doing it, comes in. They kind of almost play the orchestra. You're going to go here. You're going to go here. Here's your plan if things break bad. Here's how we're going to deal with it. So that's taken care of.
Abby, there's been this effort, I guess you could call it, by some to downplay the violence of that day. And of course, we saw President Trump pardon these rioters immediately upon taking office in the second term. What effect do you think that has on police who defended the Capitol that day?
So I'll tell you again, as former law enforcement, it's hard when you're pursuing someone and you arrest people and then they're either let go through a bail system or they're pardoned. I think here in this specific issue where the heartache lies for Capitol Police and morale is that it was a blanket pardon where a lot of people argued, could you have looked at this on a case-by-case basis instead of doing 1,500 people just blanket? And I think that's where the issue comes in, because the other concern is, and I was also a criminal justice professor for like 10 years.
You've done it all.
but the issue with that is the thing that deters bad behavior or crime is you're going to get caught and you're going to get punished. If you take one of those elements away, then people think, I can do that again, right? That's not so bad. And that's another factor that plays a role.
Several of the people that were involved in the January 6th riots, including actually a former leader of the Proud Boys group, they are staging their own march later today. How do you think security should look there, and what do you think that they're prepared for?
Right. So I saw the posts. I saw the information going out. They're actually going to meet up at the Ellipse and then march over to the Capitol. According to the post that they put out, they did say this is a peaceful, patriotic march. If you're here to cause trouble, don't show up. But again, you're going to take that with kind of a grain of salt. They're going to have security there. They're going to have people there. They're prepared for this. Like, they're prepared for this at this point. But the whole essence of this march, according to these individuals putting it together, is to commemorate Ashley, who had been shot at the event. But I think it's going to be a non-issue. They're going to be fine. It's just more of a symbolic thing.
Evie, a former criminal justice professor, did you say? Former Secret Service. You're incredible. Thank you very much. We're lucky to have you. We really appreciate your expertise this morning.
Thanks.
Well, a suspect is in custody this morning after authorities say Vice President J.D. Vance's Cincinnati home was vandalized. According to investigators, the residence was unoccupied at the time, and the VP and his family were in Washington, D.C. NBC's Chief Justice and National Affairs correspondent Kelly O'Donnell joins us with the details here. Kelly, good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. Today, the suspect is expected in court in Cincinnati, facing both local and now federal charges for the violence outside the family home of the vice president, including property damage and resisting arrest. Now, at this early stage, federal officials say they have not identified a specific link to any motivation tied to politics or current events. But of course, this all happened at the Vance home. Officials point to the suspect's previously documented mental health concerns. New details this morning about a security breach at the Cincinnati home of Vice President J.D. Vance.
Dispatch from Secret Service. We have a possible break-in going on at our location.
Vandalized early Monday, just hours after the Vance family left to return to Washington after the holiday break. Officials say this man, 26-year-old William DeFore, was armed with a hammer, damaged a Secret Service vehicle, and smashed windows on the house before being subdued by agents. Today, DeFore is facing both federal and local charges, including vandalism and trespassing. Officials say the suspect has a criminal history of vandalism and a court record of mental health issues. As far as I can tell, a crazy person tried to break in by hammering the windows. The vice president posted that on X, thanking the Secret Service and the Cincinnati police, while also requesting limits on coverage of the incident, noting, "We try to protect our kids as much as possible from the realities of this life of public service." A public life in a current climate where political violence is all too real across the political spectrum. Arson at the governor's residence in Pennsylvania in April. Assassinations. Minnesota lawmakers killed and wounded at their own homes in June. Conservative activist Charlie Kirk gunned down at his campus event in Utah in September. Seeking solutions for a safer way forward, Governors Josh Shapiro and Spencer Cox spoke to Savannah last month during a bipartisan conversation about finding common ground.
We sorely need in this country to try and lift everyone up and get us out of the darkness of political violence that has fallen upon us.
We can't make politics our religion. If we're going to make it another 250 years, we desperately need you tonight to lay down your swords and to treat each other with dignity and respect again.
In adding federal charges, Justice Department officials said the suspect used that hammer to damage enhanced security equipment that belongs to the U.S. government and is used to secure the vice president's personal home. And again, the Vances were not there at the time of this incident.
All right, Kelly, thank you very much. Well, less than a week after her death at just 35 years old, family and friends gathered in New York yesterday for a private funeral to remember Tatiana Schlossberg, the granddaughter of John F. Kennedy and Jackie Kennedy Onassis. NBC News correspondent Ann Thompson has more on how loved ones honored her life and legacy.
Hi there. Tatiana Schlossberg was many things in her short life. She was an environmental journalist, an author, a mother, a friend, a daughter, and a Kennedy. The granddaughter of President John F. Kennedy and Jacqueline wrote an extraordinary essay about her fight to live that moved so many of us. But this moment was for those who knew her best.
At the same church where they said goodbye to her grandmother, Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, the Kennedys Monday gathered for the funeral of Tatiana Schlossberg. After a picture of Tatiana and her family was posted by the JFK Library Foundation. The 35-year-old's hair coming back following more than a year of treatment for a rare form of leukemia. The caption reading, "As we remember Tatiana and celebrate her life, our hearts are with her family and all who loved her." Inside the church of St. Ignatius Loyola, her brother Jack welcomed the crowd, says a source who attended. Her husband, George Moran, seen carrying their son Edwin and watching daughter Josephine, delivered the eulogy. Her sister Rose did a reading. Weeks earlier, Tatiana wrote of her family's support. "My parents and my brother and sister, too, have been raising my children. They have held my hand unflinchingly while I have suffered." Of her mother, Caroline Kennedy, Tatiana said she tried to protect and never make her upset or angry. "I have added a new tragedy to her life, to our family's life, and there's nothing I can do to stop it." Tatiana's essay about her illness, published on the anniversary of her grandfather's assassination last November, was the New Yorker's top article of 2025. "My first thought," she wrote, "was that my kids, whose faces live permanently on the inside of my eyelids, wouldn't remember me." Among those remembering her life, former President Joe Biden, House Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, David Letterman, and many Kennedy cousins. Caroline Kennedy carried her granddaughter out of the church. All the mourners asked by Tatiana's husband to help the children remember the mother who so desperately wanted to raise them.
A large part of the service focused on Tatiana's passion for reporting on climate change. She believed that we could all make a difference to protect the planet and the people who follow us, one of the many impacts of her life. Back to you.
Oh, just absolutely heartbreaking. Ann Thompson, thank you so much. Let's get you to weather now. Winter alerts are in effect from the Midwest to New England, and we've got a closer look at that forecast with Angie Lassman, who's here in studio. Hey, Angie, good morning.
Morning, Savannah. We've got winter alerts for some, and we've got warmer than normal temperatures for others. Record highs across parts of the midsection of the country. And notice places like Dallas, you're going to hit those mid-70s today. Not quite a record in that location, but you're likely to break a record in Houston with a high of 81 degrees today, feeling more like late fall or early summer. We've got mid-60s across parts of the Midwest and upper 50s across parts of the northern plains. Notice as we get into tomorrow, this unseasonable warmth continues. We'll see it stretching all the way to the East Coast. Temperatures into the upper 60s for Raleigh. New York City hits 48 degrees, above normal for this time of year. And still those 60s to 70s across parts of the central and southern plains. So not feeling a whole lot like winter across a lot of locations as we get through the next couple of days, but we'll stay mainly mild here as we roll into the end of the work week and into the weekend. Notice Louisville hanging on to those 60s for Thursday and Friday, but by the time Saturday rolls around, a bit of a reality check back to the 50s. Still not bad for this time of year. You end up from the 50s to the 40s from Thursday to Saturday in Detroit, and then Baltimore hanging out into those 50s and 60s for the extended period into the upcoming weekend. Now, we mentioned the winter alerts, and when there are a whole lot of them, 20 million people, Minneapolis, Green Bay, Boston, you're all included in that as we gear up for this quick-moving Clipper system to kind of slide across both of those regions. We've got the snow, the ice, the freezing rain, the rain, all of that is kind of hanging out across parts of the Midwest right now and the Great Lakes. But eventually, New England will get in on that action here as we get into the second half of today. So first half, really going to be focused across Michigan, Wisconsin, places like that. We'll see the rain, ice, and snow there. And then as we get into the later parts of today, New England gets in on that. And we'll see the conditions be quite slick. Anywhere from Wisconsin to Maine, I would watch the roadways, maybe take a little extra time for yourself. Even into tomorrow morning for northern New England, you'll still have some of those lingering effects. So the snow showers, still some slick conditions. And then by the time this is all said and done, Savannah will pick up maybe up to 5 inches of snow in some of those highest elevations.
All right, there you go. Angie Lassman, thank you so much.
Of course.
There's much more to come here on Morning News Now later this hour. Weight loss game changer, the new pill hitting shelves this week that could revolutionize weight loss. But at first, countdown to the Olympics. With just 1 month to go to the Winter Games, we've got to look at the final preparations that are underway. That is coming up. We are just a month out from the fast approaching Winter Olympic Games. This morning, the Olympic torch is journeying through northern Italy in a steady relay towards Milan in time for February's opening ceremony. Meanwhile, as anticipation grows, venue preps and upgrades in co-host cities Milan and Cortina are still underway. International correspondent Claudio Lavanga joins us live from outside the Colosseum in Rome with more on what is ahead as we gear up for these games. Claudio, good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. Well, as you can see, it's been raining heavily here in Rome and also across Italy. Still, though, the Olympic flame is burning its way across the country in the hope that in a month, this rain will turn into snow. With only a month to go to the opening ceremony, the Olympic torch slowly making its way to Milan and Cortina. From Rome to the ancient ruins of Pompeii, where a familiar face joined the relay. The mountain slopes in the middle of Italy. For many torchbearers, a moment to remember, especially for Mattia Occhinero, a local boxer who on Sunday revealed that alongside the torch, he was also carrying a wedding ring. His future wife said yes to his question. But there is another question around the Olympics that remains unanswered. Will all the venues be ready on time? In Milan, workers are racing against time to finish construction of the main ice hockey arena. And even the ice rink was criticized for being slightly smaller and wider than in the NHL. The International Hockey Federation said the differences are insignificant. But in a press conference last month, the NHL's Bill Daly voiced concerns.
It's all about just making sure we have ice that is safe for our players.
Organizers promise all will be ready on time as opening day approaches. In the meantime, they revealed that Mariah Carey will be among artists performing at the opening ceremony in Milan on February 6th. No doubt all the athletes will want for the Olympics is gold. And Savannah, among the athletes aiming for gold are, of course, the NHL players. For the first time, will take part in the Olympics since 2014. For the first time in 12 years. Also, Lindsey Vonn, who staged an amazing comeback from a 5-year retirement and now aims to become the oldest alpine skier to win a medal at the Olympics ever in its history. And, of course, Mikaela Shiffrin, who also came back from an injury in 2024, stronger than ever. And now she's among those to beat.
Okay.
Savannah?
I am lucky that I'll be heading to Cortina to cover these games and some of those storylines, and I just cannot wait. Claudio, what an incredible little look ahead. Thank you so much. Great to see you. Welcome back. There are mounting questions about the future of Venezuela following that U.S. attack that saw the country's leader, Nicolás Maduro, and his wife captured and brought to the U.S. That U.S. operation is drawing condemnation from countries around the world, but also support from some Venezuelans who wanted to see Maduro go. There are also growing concerns that the U.S. might not be done with President Trump threatening other countries in the region. NBC senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez joins us from Colombia's border with Venezuela. Gabe, good morning.
Savannah, good morning. The Trump administration received condemnation, even from allies, at yesterday's emergency meeting of the UN Security Council. But the U.S. is defending Maduro's capture as a law enforcement operation, as a new Trump doctrine around the world appears to be taking shape.
This morning, Venezuela in turmoil with questions about who will run the country, as well as America's involvement. Yesterday, Delcy Rodriguez, formally sworn in as Venezuela's interim president, following Nicolás Maduro's capture. Rodriguez softening her initial tone, now offering to collaborate with the Trump administration, even as her government ordered police to arrest anyone involved in supporting this weekend's U.S. attack. We're looking for peace in Venezuela, this man says, and for the U.S. to respect our Constitution. Exiled opposition leader and Nobel Prize winner Maria Corina Machado, whom President Trump said does not have the respect to govern Venezuela, now says she plans to return to her country as soon as possible.
We will turn Venezuela into the energy hub of the Americas.
President Trump is focused on Venezuela's oil, indicating to Kristen Welker that the U.S. may have a presence there for a while, saying it may help oil companies rebuild over a period of months. And across the region, there are growing concerns after the U.S. State Department posted a taunting image. This is our hemisphere.
This is Venezuela's
our area, the Don Road Doctrine.
President Trump has also weighed in on the future of other countries in recent days, saying Cuba is ready to fall, and that a U.S. operation in Colombia sounds good to him. At the Colombian border, we spoke with these women who live in Venezuela and are hoping for calm.
What do you think of President Trump? ¿Qué piensa del presidente Trump?
He's very determined, she says, and he knows what he's doing. Other families fleeing Venezuela, declining to speak on camera, concerned for relatives they left behind, and the very uncertain future.
A U.S. official tells NBC News that a recent classified intelligence assessment determined that top members of the Maduro regime, including Delcy Rodriguez, were best positioned to lead Venezuela in the short term and maintain stability, and that was a factor in the administration not backing Machado, the opposition leader. Savannah.
Gabe, thank you very much. Well, amid the indictment of Nicolás Maduro on those drug trafficking charges, questions are emerging about why President Trump pardoned another Latin American leader who was convicted in the U.S. of similar crimes. NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba explains.
One Latin American leader in federal court, as another, already convicted, is free. Now, President Trump facing questions about why Venezuela's Nicolás Maduro's alleged crimes warranted a military extraction, while another's were worthy of cutting a 45-year prison sentence short.
This was a man who was persecuted very unfairly.
This weekend, Mr. Trump defending his decision to pardon Juan Orlando Hernandez, former president of Honduras, convicted by an American jury in 2024 for conspiring with drug traffickers to smuggle more than 400 tons of cocaine into the U.S. Witnesses for the prosecution said at his trial that Hernandez accepted bribes and protected dealers, like the notorious Joaquin Guzman, also known as El Chapo, who is serving a life sentence here in the U.S. President Trump's Secretary of State also now facing questions about the pardon, making the case to our own Kristen Welker that there are key differences between Hernandez and Maduro.
The former president of Honduras, so this is not someone who was in power, had any influence with the politics of Honduras any longer. And he felt that the former president of Honduras was treated very unfairly by the previous administration.
While it's true the Biden administration did indict Hernandez and ran the prosecution, the investigation began during Mr. Trump's first term, in part led by a former top Trump lawyer, Emil Bove. Democrats, while not defending Maduro, already pouncing on the comparison to Hernandez's case. Senator Mark Warner saying, quote, "The hypocrisy underlying this decision is especially glaring." Hernandez defiant for almost a decade.
Reitero mi rechazo total en nombre del pueblo hondureño al señalamiento que nuestro país es un narcoestado.
Hernandez has not said whether he'll return to Honduras, where he still faces an arrest warrant, but it's unclear if that'll last. A member of Hernandez's party takes power next month after recent elections, something President Trump mentioned in defense of the pardon.
One of the reasons that was done is because of the fact that the party in power felt very strongly that that man was treated very badly.
It's unclear whether Maduro, who just pleaded not guilty to charges of narco-terrorism, among others, would have the same support if he returns home. Although Maduro's allies remain in power for now, the country's future leadership not at all certain. One thing is clear in the tale of these two leaders.
The man that I pardoned was, if you could equate it to us, he was treated like the Biden administration treated a man named Trump.
The president sees himself in one, but not the other.
Our thanks to Monica Alba for that report. Coming up, a record flu season. New data from the CDC is finding that doctors' visits for flu-like symptoms are reaching record highs. Luckily, we have tips from one of our medical experts on how to protect yourself and others this winter. Stay with us. That's next. We're back now with the latest data coming out of the CDC that shows this has been one of the worst flu seasons in decades. According to the CDC, doctors' visits for flu-like symptoms have hit the highest level in, get this, nearly 30 years. It comes as 45 states are experiencing very high levels of flu activity right now. And even though we're just hitting the peak of flu season, there have also been at least 9 pediatric deaths reported across the country so far. For more on where we stand in flu season right now, I'm joined by NBC News medical contributor Dr. Natalie Azar. Dr. Azar, good morning. Thanks as always for being here. All right, just how serious is this right now?
You know what? We really are having quite a season. We had a terrible season last year.
Right, I remember.
Yes, and many experts will tell you that we typically don't see 2 consecutive bad seasons back to back. But what's different this year are really 2 things. One is that the predominant strain is this H3N2, which usually means a slightly more severe season. And the strain acquired all of these mutations that make it less likely that the vaccine is at least going to protect you against infection. It will still protect you against, of course, severe disease and hospitalization. That, plus, we're just seeing such a significant decline in the number of people getting vaccinated. So it's kind of the perfect storm to set us up for what is becoming a pretty bad season.
And it sounds like this strain is a little bit more, it's a little different, more dangerous than usual.
Yeah, it's so when we usually anticipate 2 influenza A strains and 1 influenza B strain, and the A strain that is circulating, the H3N2, is notoriously associated with usually more severe disease. So it's not like it mutated to become more severe; it just generally is a strain that causes more severe disease.
And this is just going to keep climbing? We're not at the peak yet?
We are not at the peak yet. All the metrics are increasing week to week to week, and some by like a significant jump. And that data point from the intro, almost 1 in every 10 outpatient visits is for a flu-like illness.
Yeah, wow.
The highest since we started gathering this data since 1997. And we don't see it leveling off. So definitely anticipate activity for the next number of weeks.
Who's most at risk? I guess, like, for sure, and importantly for like the severe disease and hospitalization. But right now, when it says rampant as that is it just sort of a blanket? It could happen to anyone.
Look, one piece of data that I always hate to report is that children. Last year, half of the children who died from flu had no underlying medical problems. 90% of them were unvaccinated. But generally speaking, older than 65, younger than 5, pregnant, immunocompromised, people with chronic medical conditions are always at greater risk for having complications from flu.
Okay, I know that we always ask this, and I know what your answer is going to be. Is it too late to get the shot? The answer is no. Can you explain, though, why? Like, how does that work? Like, why, if we're already into January, should somebody go get this?
Even if we were starting to see a decline in cases right now, I would still tell people to get a flu shot. And the reason is, we talked about this predominant H3N2 strain. There's another influenza strain out there that might just want to pick up if the other strain starts going away. We also tend to see a bump or a surge in influenza B towards the end of the season. It's not a one and done with the flu. Even if you've had the flu, you can still get infected with the other strains that are circulating. It takes about 1 to 2 weeks to get your protection after you get the flu shot. So even if you got it now, you would be protected over the next couple of weeks against severe disease, because there are hotspots. We saw the map. There are hotspots all over the country.
Very quickly, we know things like washing hands, masking if you're going to be on a plane or crowded space, but remind us, antivirals.
Yeah. There are a number of different antivirals that are available. Tamiflu, of course, is one that people are very familiar with. There's another one called Sofluza that pediatricians like. It's a 1-tablet pill approved for 5 and up for not severe disease. Best if started within a day or 2 of symptoms.
For anyone?
I typically will reserve antivirals for my patients who are immunocompromised.
Okay.
If you're otherwise young and reasonably healthy, the antiviral will shorten the duration of illness by 1 day. That's not a major reason to get it. However, if you are worried about passing it to others, if you want to prophylax a more vulnerable person in your household, you can give them Tamiflu, let's say. But the people who should get it are people who are hospitalized with flu, who are at risk for complications from flu. Those high-risk groups that I mentioned definitely are candidates for the antivirals.
Dr. Azar, great information. Thanks as always.
You bet.
Well, now we've got a game changer to tell you about that could impact your weight loss goals for 2026. Novo Nordisk announced its once daily Wegovy pill is now available in the U.S. It's already getting a lot of interest. The pills maker saw its stock jump 5% after it officially unveiled these pills yesterday. NBC News correspondent Emily Aketa joins us now with more on this new chapter for these blockbuster drugs. Emily, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning to you. Roughly 1 in 8 adults are already taking a GLP-1, and doctors believe the Wegovy pill will grow that number even further. It avoids needles and comes at a lower cost, sending other drug makers scrambling to catch up.
From manufacturing plants to store shelves, the new frontier of weight loss has officially arrived in pill form.
Imagine not having to refrigerate it, not having to inject it. You just simply swallow it as a regular pill.
Just 2 weeks since FDA approval, the first customers are starting to pick up the appetite-suppressing Wegovy pill, the drug's starter dose, now available with a prescription at more than 70,000 U.S. pharmacies such as CVS and Costco and some telehealth providers, with the higher doses of the once-daily pill available by the end of the week, according to drug maker Novo Nordisk.
There is a ton of interest in a pill version of a GLP-1.
Dr. Shauna Levy says patients have been asking about it for months.
How big of a deal is it to have a needle-free option?
I think people are much more comfortable with a pill. It's much more approachable.
The pill has shown comparable results to Wegovy's injectable counterpart and similar side effects such as nausea and vomiting.
I actually felt a pretty big difference in the first few days.
Chris Mertens participated in the pill's clinical trial and says he lost 40 pounds over a year and a half.
I was able to do a lot more activities with my kids. I was able to have a lot more energy at work.
Rival Eli Lilly is expected to gain FDA approval possibly this spring for its pill, which doesn't have as strict of timing and dietary restrictions as Wegovy.
Oral Wegovy needs to be taken on an empty stomach 30 minutes before eating any food or drink.
Drug makers have been fighting for the crown of an industry that analysts say could be worth $100 billion by the 2030s. There are already signs the popular weight loss meds are reshaping how consumers spend their money on food, and some brands are rushing to keep up, prioritizing protein and smaller portion sizes. A recent study finding within 6 months of starting a GLP-1, households reduced spending at fast food restaurants and coffee shops by nearly 8%. Just one of the drug's far-reaching impacts as Americans begin a new rush to shed unwanted pounds.
And in recent years, Novo Nordisk has struggled with supply shortages after launching the injection in the U.S. But this time around, the company says they are confident they can meet supply needs with the pill. Time will tell, Savannah.
All right, Emily, thank you so much. Well, let's get you money news now. A former Federal Reserve chair is issuing a warning about America's soaring national debt. NBC News business and economy reporter Emily Lorsch has our Money Minute. Emily, good morning.
That's right, Savannah. Former Treasury Secretary and Fed Chair Janet Yellen and other economists say that the country might be nearing a dangerous tipping point. With federal debt now about 100% of GDP, some are warning that the government's borrowing needs could limit the Federal Reserve's ability to fight inflation. And that could potentially push prices higher for Americans. Yellen says she's hopeful that mounting pressure such as financial strain on Social Security and Medicare could push lawmakers toward bipartisan budget agreement. And humanoid robots took the center stage at CES in Las Vegas yesterday. Boston Dynamics, owned by Hyundai, demonstrated its robot Atlas for the first time, showing fluid walking and movement. That's as competition with Tesla and others heats up. The automaker says a production version of Atlas that will help assemble cars is set to be deployed by 2028. Finally, playtime may never look the same. The Lego Group has plans to roll out smart bricks, computer-powered Lego pieces that bring light, sound, and motion to new Lego Star Wars sets. And that's all without cameras or AI. The first sets launch on March 1st, and more updates and themes could follow. You can never guess what's going to come out next, Savannah.
I've been kind of like feeling as an adult like I could get back into like Legos, as you know, like how adults like will like do a coloring book or something.
Oh yeah,
as like a thing.
I mean, one of our producers, Maya, has Lego ornaments that she put up on her Christmas tree.
Like,
so there's Lego everything.
Love it. Thanks, Emily. Coming up, tax season tips. The filing season for taxpayers is right around the corner. The new changes you can expect this season and important dates to know. That is up next. Welcome back. Believe it or not, the 2026 tax filing season is already right around the corner. Many of us will soon start receiving W-2s from our employers. And then you can't file last year's returns until the IRS officially announces the start of the season. There's a lot you can do now to prepare. For more, let's bring in Mark Steber. He is the Chief Tax Information Officer at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service and the person who has convinced me I have to do at least a little bit of preparation. And part of the reason that we're talking about this now, even though some of you may be rolling your eyes at home, Mark, thank you very much. Always great to see you. Let's start with important dates, because again, it's not yet, but they are coming. But do we know when the IRS will begin accepting tax returns this year, and also the deadline to file?
Yeah, the deadline's April 15th, but don't wait till then. That's a lame move. The typical start of season is right about the end of January. The IRS has not announced, but we expect that any day now, and no reason to wait. As soon as you hit that, find your tax pro and get started.
How should taxpayers start to get organized? In addition to finding a pro, what else is it that we can do to do that prep?
Well, as you just commented, find something that works. It's kind of like exercising. If you're not going to do it, don't do it. But if you find something that works for you, go do it. The same thing with being organized. At my house, we keep a big manila envelope right in the central drawer in the living room. Anything that comes in that looks like taxes, it gets shoved in there. I like to break stuff into 4 buckets. Your income items, you mentioned W-2s, but in 2025, this season, there's going to be a whole lot more digital assets, cryptocurrency, mortgage statements, and that sort of thing. So income, a deduction section for your charitable donations, mortgage interest, and any of those things you have. I like an other section if you had capital activities, life changes. And then the last thing I like, and this is one of those things you can do, go find last year's tax return. It's a great roadmap for where to start for this year.
Mark, convince us. What are the benefits to filing early?
It's very simple. As we've seen for decades, 3 out of 4 people get a refund. That's gone down a little bit, but a lot of people get a lot of money, billions of dollars. File early, get your money early. You don't need to be a financial wizard to know that makes sense. But here's 2 other tips. If you file early, you lock up your personal data, your social security numbers, your significant others, your dependents if you have those. So some of those schemers and scammers that are stealing data or buying it on the web, they can't swoop in and try to steal your tax refund. So file early, get your money, duh. File early, lock up your data. You lock your doors and you lock your car. And thirdly, and here's a secret for your viewers, if you file early and you do owe because you had a great year, you don't have to pay until April 15th. Filing is separate from paying. And you know exactly how much money you got to put aside. File early, get your money. File early, protect your assets. File early and pay later. It's a great part of the tax code.
It's kind of like a magic trick that you have me laughing during a tax segment, Mark. So hopefully people at home feel the same. Important one here. What are some new tax laws, changes people should be aware of?
Well, the big, beautiful bill, which got a lot of publicity, or the working family tax cuts bill, whatever you want to call it, it is one of the most monumental tax law changes for working Americans that has ever passed. Whether you're, political or not, it's irrelevant. It is a huge thing. There's new deductions for automobile purchase interest if it was manufactured in or assembled in the United States. There's a new deduction for tips, a new deduction for overtime, a new deduction for seniors, different from the other senior deduction. And then if you have high property taxes or state income taxes, they expanded the SALT deduction and a whole lot more. There's a lot to watch for your 2025 taxes. It's not like last year.
Mark Steber, it really is incredible. Does everybody tell you that you make them excited about taxes and normally they aren't?
Not till I say, how much money did you leave on the table? The what's in your wallet? How much money did you not collect? Because here's another secret. The IRS does not just send you more money because you leave it off. If your person leaves it off, or you leave it off, it stays off. And there's a lot of things you can leave off that's more money in your pocket, and your refund's never been more important.
Mark Steber, there you go, getting us pumped about taxes. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you soon when I call you for our prep.
I'll see you soon, Savannah. Say hi to Joe.
I will. That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now. Thanks very much for joining us, and don't go anywhere. The news continues right now.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.